Park Ju-woo stared at her rejection letter. The third one in as many years. The screen of her tablet glowed in the dim light of her small apartment. Application to Galactic Alliance Emergency Response Corps, DE-90. She sighed and tossed the tablet onto her couch. 5 years since Earth had joined the Galactic Alliance, and humans were still treated like dangerous animals. Sure, they classified Earth as a Class 12 death world. But that wasn't humans' fault. They had simply evolved to survive there. Her comm unit beeped. An off-world call at this hour was strange. Park Ju speaking, she answered. A blue-skinned alien face appeared on screen. Specialist Park. This is Commander Xelner of GAERC Command. Your application has been reconsidered. We need you and a team of human specialists on Taylor IV immediately. Ju sat up straight. I don't understand. I just received another rejection. Circumstances have changed, Xelner said. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of stress in his species. We have a disaster situation beyond our current team's capabilities. A mining colony earthquake. Thousands trapped. Toxic atmosphere. High gravity. Unstable ground. And now you want humans. Ju said, understanding. We need you within 12 hours. Bring your best team. The screen went dark. Ju allowed herself one small smile before reaching for her comm unit. She had calls to make. Kim Do-hyun was teaching the structural engineering class when Ju-woo's message arrived. He read it once, excused himself from his students, and was packed within the hour. Lee Eun-ji was harder to reach. The medical specialist was deep in an underground hospital where signals couldn't penetrate. Ju-woo had to send a courier, but once the message reached her, Yeon-ji left her shift immediately. Baek Hyun was the easiest. The communications expert had been waiting for this call as long as Ju-woo had. About time they realized they need Deathworlders, he said when she reached him. I'll meet you at the spaceport. The trip to Teller IV took 9 hours in the fastest ship GAERC could provide. Ju used the time to brief her team. Teller IV has 1.3 times Earth's gravity. Its atmosphere contains nitrogen compounds toxic to most galactic species. The mining colony was built to extract rare minerals, but an earthquake hit 2 days ago. The standard GAERC team has only rescued 12% of victims so far. What's their problem? Do-hyun asked, checking his equipment. The gravity. Partly, Ju said. Also the atmosphere requires full containment suits, which limit movement. And the ground keeps shifting. In other words, Yeon-ji said, it's like a bad day in Seoul. They laughed. Earth's natural disasters had made humans experts in rescue operations long before they met aliens. The GAERC command ship orbited Teller IV, a dusty brown planet with swirling red clouds. As the human shuttle docked, Ju could feel the eyes of alien crew members on them. Commander Xelner met them in the docking bay. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his blue skin marked with official GAERC symbols. All 4 of his eyes widened when he saw the humans. You're the Deathworlders, he asked, looking them up and down. You look fragile. Ju had heard this before. To most aliens, humans appeared weak. No natural armor. No claws. No extra limbs. They couldn't understand how such soft-looking creatures survived on a death world. We're stronger than we look, Ju said simply. Brief us on the current situation. Xelnar led them to a command center overlooking the disaster zone. Holographic displays showed a sprawling mining complex, partially collapsed. Red dots indicated life signs trapped beneath rubble. The main shaft collapsed first, Xelnar explained. Then supporting structures failed. We've been trying to reach the residential sections, but the atmosphere is eating through our equipment, and the gravity is exhausting our teams. Do-hyun studied the structural data. Your braces are all wrong for this gravity, and you're approaching from the top down. How else would we approach? Asked an alien engineer with insect-like features. From the sides, Do-hyun said, as if it was obvious. Create stable tunnels through these maintenance corridors. Zellner's translator took a moment to process. Those corridors are flooded with toxic gas. Not a problem for our suits, Ju said. We're used to working in hazardous environments. The aliens exchanged glances. How soon can we deploy? Ju asked. You want to go down there? Now. Zellner seemed shocked. That's why we're here, isn't it? Ju turned to her team. Suit up. 20 minutes later, the humans stepped out of the transport onto the planet's surface. The higher gravity was noticeable, but not debilitating. Their specialized suits, designed for Earth's worst disasters, handled the toxic atmosphere easily. The alien rescue workers stopped to stare at them. Most had never seen humans in person before. Specialist Park, Zellner's voice came through the comm. Perhaps you should observe our operations first to understand. The ground shook. An aftershock. The alien workers scrambled for cover, their movements slowed by gravity and fear. The humans simply braced their stances and remained standing. When the shaking stopped, Ju looked at her team. Do-Yun, assess those structural weak points. Yunji, set up a medical station where we can bring survivors. Haiyan, I want communication relays every 50 meters as we go in. What are you going to do? Zellner asked through the comm. Ju was already walking toward the most damaged part of the complex, where alien rescuers had deemed it too dangerous to enter. I'm going to start finding survivors, she said. The first survivor was a young mining technician, a reptilian species trapped when her workstation collapsed. She stared with wide golden eyes as Jumu lifted a metal beam that 3 alien rescuers had failed to move. You're human, the technician asked through her translator. Yes, Ju said, helping her up. Can you walk? The technician nodded, still staring. Good. Follow the markers to the medical station. By the time Ju reached the next trapped group, Do-Yun had arrived with makeshift bracing materials. This whole section is unstable, he said, but I can shore it up enough to get everyone out. How long? For an alien team, days. For us, hours. They worked steadily, their bodies adapting to the harsh conditions in ways the aliens couldn't. When standard tools failed in the toxic atmosphere, they improvised. When passages were too small, they made themselves fit. 6 hours after they arrived, they had rescued more survivors than the alien team had found in 2 days. In the command ship, Zellner watched the humans' life signs on his monitors. According to the data, they should be exhausted. The gravity alone should have slowed them to a crawl. Instead, they kept moving, kept working. How is this possible? Asked his second-in-command. They come from a world that tries to kill them daily, Zellner said quietly. High-gravity areas, toxic zones, natural disasters. These are normal on Earth. On the screen, they watched as Juwu emerged from a collapsed tunnel carrying 2 alien children, one under each arm. Perhaps, Zellner said, we've misunderstood what makes Deathworlders so dangerous. 12 hours into the operation, Juwu met with her team at the makeshift command post they'd established in the heart of the disaster zone. Status reports, she said, taking a quick drink of water. I've established a full communication network, Haiyan said. We can now detect life signs through 20 meters of debris. Medical station is running efficiently, Yumji added. I've trained some of the alien medics in our trade methods. They're quick learners. Structural supports are holding, Do-Yun reported. I've identified 3 main pockets where most survivors are trapped. With your permission, I'd like to start cutting through from below. Juwu nodded. Do it. The faster we. She was interrupted as Commander Zellner's transport landed nearby. The blue-skinned commander stepped out, followed by several high-ranking GAERC officers. They approached cautiously, still uncomfortable being so close to humans. Specialist Park, Zellner said formally. Your team's performance has been unprecedented. We're just getting started, Ju replied. That's why I'm here. Zellner stood straighter. The GAERC command has reviewed the situation. We would like to formally request that you take charge of this rescue operation. A murmur ran through the gathered aliens. Putting humans in charge was unheard of. You came to Earth looking for Deathworlders, Ju said. This is what we do. She turned to her team, then looked at the aliens who had gathered to watch. Some still showed fear, but others displayed something new: respect. We'll need everyone working together, Ju said. This isn't about humans or aliens anymore. It's about saving lives. She pointed to the mine complex, where thousands were still trapped. Let's get to work. The sun never truly rose on Tel Aviv. The thick, toxic clouds turned day into a dull red glow. But the work never stopped. 24 hours after taking command, Park Ju stood at the edge of a newly cleared rescue path. Sweat ran down her face inside her helmet. The display on her wrist showed rescue members that seemed impossible just a day earlier. 300% improvement, Commander Zellner said, approaching her. He still moved carefully in the high gravity. Your methods are unorthodox but effective. Sometimes the direct approach works best, Ju replied. Around them, human and alien rescue workers moved with growing coordination. The aliens had begun to learn from the humans, adapting their techniques for their different bodies. Juwoo's comm unit beeped. Juwoo here. We found another pocket. Do-Hyun's voice came through. Large chamber, about 50 survivors. But the approach is unstable. Send me the location. I'm coming. Zellner followed as Juwoo moved toward a collapsed tunnel entrance where Do-Hyun waited. His exoframe was covered in toxic dust, but his movements were still quick and precise. The chamber is 30 meters below, Do-Hyun explained, pointing to a structural diagram on his tablet, but the shaft is filled with debris and toxic gas pockets. What's your solution? Juwoo asked. Do-Hyun pointed to a narrow gap in the rubble. We go through there, install bracing as we move. It's tight, but we can make it work. Zellner stepped forward. That passage is barely half a meter wide in some places. No one can fit through there. We can, said Juwoo. Your suits won't fit, Zellner argued. Juwoo looked at Do-Hyun. They both knew what this meant. We'll modify the suits, Do-Hyun said. Remove the outer shell, keep just the essential breathing components. That's suicide. Zellner's 4 eyes widened. The atmosphere is corrosive to most life forms. Most life forms, Juwoo reminded him. Humans can handle short exposures with minimal protection. Before Zellner could argue further, Juwoo called the rest of her team. Within minutes, they had gathered with additional human workers who had arrived from Earth overnight. We need to move fast, Juwoo told them. Minimal suits, maximum caution. Lee Yunji worked quickly, modifying breathing apparatuses for the human team. This will protect your lungs, she explained, but your skin will be exposed to the atmosphere. It will burn, but not enough to cause permanent damage. How long can we last? Juwoo asked. In this concentration, maybe 2 hours before it becomes dangerous. Yunji handed out medical patches. These will help with the pain. The alien medical staff watched in horror as the humans removed their protective outer suits, leaving only thin underlayers and the breathing masks. They can't be serious, one alien medic whispered to Zellner. They are, Zellner replied quietly. This is why they're Deathworlders. The passage was even narrower than it had looked. Juwoo went first, crawling through gaps that seemed impossibly small. The toxic air bit at her exposed skin, a burning sensation that grew steadily worse. She ignored it. Do-Hyun followed, carrying collapsible bracing rods. Every few meters, he would set up supports to prevent collapse. Behind him came other humans, each carrying rescue equipment or medical supplies. Baek Hyun remained outside, coordinating communication. I'm picking up life signs ahead. His voice crackled in Juwoo's ear. Strong readings. Copy that, Juwoo replied, pushing through another tight space. Her skin was red and starting to blister, but she kept moving. After 20 minutes of crawling, the passage opened into a larger space. Jiwoo's light revealed a partially collapsed chamber. Dozens of alien faces looked up at her, their eyes reflecting her light. "We found them," she reported. Then, to the survivors, "We're from the rescue team. We're going to get you out." A tall, thin alien stepped forward. "The air is running out, and 3 are badly injured." Yeonji squeezed through the passage. Despite the pain of the atmosphere on her skin, she immediately moved to the injured aliens. "I need to stabilize them before we move them," she said, opening her medical kit. Jiwoo nodded. "Do-yeon, can we widen this passage?" "Not without risking collapse," he said after studying the structure. "But I can create a pulley system. We'll have to move them one by one." "Do it," Jiwoo ordered. She turned to the alien leader. "What's your name?" "Telnar," he replied. "Mining supervisor." "Telnar, I need your people ready to move as soon as we have the path secure. Injured first, then the youngest, then everyone else." The alien nodded, clearly surprised by the human's calm efficiency despite her visibly painful condition. Outside the passage, a crowd had gathered. Alien rescue workers watched the tiny opening where the humans had disappeared. Commander Zellner paced nervously, checking his time display. "It's been over an hour," he said to Hyun. "Your team's exposure is reaching dangerous levels." "They know," Hyun replied, not looking up from his equipment. "But there are 50 lives in there." A signal beeped on Hyun's console. "They're coming out," he announced. The passage opening shifted as Do-yeon's pulley system activated. Slowly, an injured alien emerged, secured in a rescue harness. Alien medics rushed forward to take the survivor. One by one, the trapped miners were pulled to safety. As each emerged, the gathered crowd grew larger. Other rescue teams stopped their work to watch. This section had been declared impossible to reach just yesterday. 90 minutes after entering, the last survivor came through. Only then did the humans begin to emerge. Yeonji came out first, her skin angry red and blistered. She walked straight to the medical station without a word, professional to the end. Do-yeon followed, his engineer's hands cracked and bleeding from the toxic exposure and hard work. He nodded to Hyun as he passed. Jiwoo was last. As she crawled from the narrow passage, a hush fell over the gathered aliens. Her exposed skin was burned and blistered worse than the others. She had been in the toxic atmosphere the longest. She stood, straightened her back despite the pain, and walked to Xelnar. 50 survivors, she reported formally. All accounted for. Xelnar stared at her, all 4 eyes blinking rapidly. "You need medical attention." "After my team is treated," Jiwoo said firmly. An alien stepped forward from the crowd. It was Telnar, the mining supervisor. "You saved my people," he said, his translator struggling with his emotional voice. "You suffered to save us." Jiwoo simply nodded. To her, it was just the job. The medical bay aboard the GAERC command ship was crowded. The human team sat together as medics treated their chemical burns. Despite their injuries, they were already planning the next phase of the rescue. "The North Quadrant has at least 200 trapped," Do-yeon said, looking at a holographic map. "If we approach from this maintenance tunnel, we can." The door slid open, interrupting him. Commander Xelnar entered, followed by a delegation of GAERC officials. They looked uncomfortably at the injured humans. "Specialist Park," Xelnar began formally. "The GAERC Command Council has reviewed your team's performance." Jiwoo sat straighter, ignoring the pain from her healing burns. Never in the history of the Galactic Alliance Emergency Response Corps has a rescue operation seen such improvement in efficiency. Xelnar continued, "Your methods are unconventional, but the results are undeniable." One of the officials stepped forward. She was a tall, elegant alien with feathered skin. "The Council has voted unanimously to create a new division within GAERC, the Extreme Environment Response Division. We would like you to lead it." Juwu looked at her team, then back at the officials. What would this division do? What you did today, Zellner said. Take on the missions others can't handle. A Deathworlder division, Hyen said with a small smile. Not just Deathworlders, the feathered official clarified. But yes, your unique adaptations would be central to the division's function. Juwu considered for a moment. I'll accept on one condition. We train aliens alongside humans, share knowledge, build mixed teams. The officials looked surprised. You would teach our people your methods. Surviving isn't just about physical strength, Juwu explained. It's about mindset. Anyone can learn that. Zellner looked at her burned skin, then at the determination in her eyes. Perhaps we've been misunderstanding Deathworlders all along. We thought you dangerous because of your physical capabilities, but it's your willingness to endure suffering for others that truly sets you apart. Juwu shook her head. On Earth, we don't see it as suffering. We see it as necessary. When someone needs help, you help. That's all. The alien officials exchanged glances, a new understanding dawning. We have much to learn from each other, Zellner said finally. The new division is yours to build, Specialist Park. As the officials left, Juwu turned to her team. Despite their injuries, they all wore the same expression, determination. Get some rest, she told them. Tomorrow, we go back down there. There are still people who need us. And that, more than anything, was what made humans Deathworlders. Not that they could survive the harshest environments in the galaxy, but that they would choose to enter them, again and again, to save others. 5 days into the rescue operation, Park Juwu stood at the edge of a massive sinkhole that hadn't existed the day before. The ground on Teller IV was becoming more unstable by the hour. Her skin still showed the red marks from her previous toxic exposure, but the pain had faded to a dull ache. The whole mining complex is failing, Kim Do-yeon said, studying his readings. The earthquake damaged more than just the visible structures. Juwu nodded. The situation was getting worse, not better. Yet they had already rescued over 60% of the trapped miners, a record for a disaster of this scale. Baek Hyen approached, his comm equipment humming. I just intercepted a message from GAERC Command. They're considering a full evacuation of all rescue personnel. We still have people trapped down there, Juwu said, her voice firm. I know, but look at this. Hyen handed her a data pad. The planet's mineral composition is reacting with the mining equipment. It's creating pockets of explosive gas throughout the lower levels. Juwu studied the readings. This was bad. Very bad, but not impossible. Get Lee Eunji and Commander Zellner, she ordered. We need to talk. The command center was crowded with both human and alien rescue workers. The mood was tense. On the main screen, a GAERC official with gray scales and a formal uniform was speaking. Therefore, by order of GAERC High Command, all rescue personnel are to evacuate Teller IV within 12 hours. The risk of catastrophic failure is too great. Commander Zellner stood at attention. Sir, we still have an estimated 800 survivors trapped in the complex. Unfortunate, but unavoidable, the official replied coldly. The geological survey is clear. The entire area could collapse at any moment. Park Juwu stepped forward. With respect, the survey is wrong. The room fell silent. The official's eyes narrowed on the human. Explain. The survey predicts total collapse within 12 hours based on current conditions, Juwu said, but it doesn't account for possible countermeasures. Do-yeon joined her, bringing up his own data on the screen. I've analyzed the gas pocket formations. They're predictable. If we can vent the gas before it reaches critical concentration. Impossible, the official interrupted. The gas is forming faster than it could be vented with our equipment. With your equipment, yes, Juwu agreed, but we brought something else. She nodded to Hyen, who displayed an image of a small device. This is a modified atmosphere processor from Earth, Ju explained. We use them in our deep mining operations. With some adjustments, we can convert the explosive gas into a more stable compound. The official studied the design. How many of these do you have? 3, Ju admitted. But we can make more using materials from the mining complex. And how long would this buy us? Do Yun answered. Based on my calculations, approximately 73 hours before critical failure. The official's expression was unreadable. And you believe you can extract all remaining survivors in that time? Yes, Ju said without hesitation, if we're allowed to continue. A long pause followed as the official considered. Finally, he spoke. Commander Xelnar, this decision falls to you as ground commander. Do you support this human plan? Xelnar looked at Ju, then at his own team. Many of the aliens nodded slightly. They had seen what the humans could do. I do, Xelnar said firmly. These humans have already done the impossible multiple times. I believe they can do it again. Very well, the official said reluctantly. You have 72 hours, not 73. After that, evacuation is mandatory. No exceptions. As the screen went dark, the room erupted in activity. Ju turned to her team. We need to move fast. Do-Yun, start modifying those processors. Yunji, I need all medical teams ready for rapid evacuation of critical patients. Haiyun, find me every possible entrance to the lower levels. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans began working immediately, without fear, without doubt. Just pure focus. Xelnar approached Ju. The official gave us less time than you calculated. I know, Ju said. We'll make it work. 20 hours later, the situation had become a race against time. Ju's plan was working. The gas processors were keeping the most dangerous pockets stable, but the ground continued to shift, creating new challenges with each passing hour. In a partially collapsed medical bay, Li Yunji trained a group of alien medics. When extracting injured victims from unstable areas, speed is essential. Don't waste time on full diagnostics until they're in a safe zone. An alien with 6 limbs raised a hand. But our protocols state. Protocols are for stable situations, Yunji interrupted gently. In disasters, you must adapt. The aliens looked uncomfortable, but they listened. After seeing humans work, they were starting to understand the Deathworlder approach. Meanwhile, in a narrow maintenance tunnel, Do-Yun made an important discovery. Ju, he called over the comm. I found something. The mining complex has a network of old maintenance tunnels that don't appear on the official maps. Are they stable? Ju asked. More stable than the main passages, Do-Yun replied. And they lead directly to Section 12, where the largest group of survivors is trapped. Good work, Ju said. Mark the entrances. I'll send teams immediately. The rescue was gaining momentum. Hour by hour, more survivors emerged from the crumbling complex. Alien and human teams worked side by side, each learning from the other. But below the surface, pressure was building. At hour 46, disaster struck. Ju was leading a team through a newly discovered tunnel when her sensors began screaming warnings. A massive gas pocket had formed directly ahead, too large for their processors to handle. Everyone back, she ordered. Move. The team retreated quickly. They had nearly reached the surface when a tremendous explosion shook the entire complex. The shock wave threw Ju against a wall, knocking the breath from her lungs. When the dust settled, she realized the tunnel behind them had collapsed. And worse, the explosion had triggered a chain reaction. Status report. She called into her comm. Static answered. The blast had knocked out communications. She turned to her team. 3 humans and 2 aliens, all looking to her for leadership. We need to find another way out. Above ground, chaos reigned. The explosion had separated Juwoo's team from the rest of the operation. A huge section of the complex had collapsed, cutting off access to dozens of rescue teams and hundreds of survivors. In the command center, Hyun worked frantically to restore communications, while Commander Zellner argued with GAERC officials on the main screen. The evacuation order is now immediate, the official was saying. All personnel must leave the surface within 6 hours. We have teams still underground. Selnar protested, including Specialist Park's team. Unfortunate, but we cannot risk more lives, the official replied coldly. Do-Yun slammed his fist on a console, startling the aliens nearby. We don't leave our people behind. This is not a debate, the official said. It is an order. As the screen went dark again, Selnar turned to the human team members. Their expressions were identical, determined, almost fierce. You're not going to obey the evacuation order, are you? He asked. Would you? Yoonji asked in return. Zelnar was silent for a moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he began removing his command insignia. I cannot officially sanction a rescue attempt against direct orders. He placed the insignia on the table. But as of this moment, I am taking a personal leave of absence, and I would like to volunteer for whatever mission these humans are planning. The room fell silent. Then Hyun smiled. Welcome to the Deathworlder mindset, Commander. Underground, Juwoo led her small team through increasingly unstable tunnels. Their air supply was limited, and the toxic atmosphere was seeping through cracks in their damaged suits. But they kept moving. There should be an access shaft ahead, she told them, checking her partly functioning tablet. It might lead to the surface. A young alien technician looked at her with wide eyes. How are you so calm? We could die here. Juwoo considered the question. On Earth, we face death often. Earthquakes, floods, storms. We learn early that panic never helps. Is that why humans are so good at rescue work? The alien asked. Partly, Juwoo said as they reached a junction. But mostly, we just hate the idea of leaving anyone behind. She pointed to a narrow shaft above them. That's our way out. It'll be a tight climb, but we can make it. One by one, they began the difficult ascent. The shaft was barely wide enough for the humans. The aliens with their broader frames struggled even more. But no one complained. They had learned from watching the humans. When they finally reached a point where their comms began working again, Juwoo immediately contacted the command center. This is Park. We're alive. Section 8, Shaft 3. 5 of us. Hyun's voice came through, filled with relief. Juwoo, thank the stars. We're coming for you. No, she replied firmly. The ground is too unstable. Send coordinates for the nearest safe extraction point. We'll come to you. There was a pause. Then Selner's voice came through. Specialist Park, be advised that GAERC has ordered full evacuation. All rescue operations are officially terminated. Juwoo looked at her team, then at the dark tunnel ahead that might lead to safety. Understood, she said, but we're still coming out, and we're bringing everyone we find along the way. She switched off her comm and turned to her team. GAERC has ordered evacuation. Anyone who wants to head directly to the extraction point can go. No one will think less of you. Not a single member of her team moved. The alien technician stepped forward. We've seen how humans do things. We want to learn more. Juwoo nodded, a small smile on her tired face. Then let's go find some survivors. And they moved forward into the darkness, Deathworlders, and their new students, refusing to accept that anyone would be left behind. The emergency evacuation ships filled the orbit around Teller IV. Most rescue personnel had already left the surface. Only a small group remained, gathered in a makeshift command center at the edge of the disaster zone. 6 hours until the planet's crust reaches critical instability, Kim Do-Hyun reported, studying his instruments. After that, the entire mining complex will collapse. Lee Yoonji checked her medical supplies. We have enough for about 50 more survivors. Baek Hyun worked frantically at his communication station. I've located 4 more groups of survivors. The largest is in Section 14, about 90 miners. The other groups are smaller, scattered throughout the lower levels. Commander Zellner, without his official insignia, looked at the humans with a mixture of awe and concern. Even if we find them all, how do we get them to the evacuation ships in time? One problem at a time, Park Ju-woo said. She had emerged from the tunnels 2 hours earlier, bringing 12 survivors with her small team. Her suit was torn, her face streaked with dust and sweat, but her eyes remained clear and focused. First, we find them. Then we worry about evacuation. A beep from Hyun's console interrupted them. Incoming message from GAERC Command. The main screen lit up, showing the same gray-scaled official from before. His expression was severe. Commander Zellner is relieved of duty for disobeying direct orders. He announced without preamble. All remaining personnel are ordered to evacuate immediately. Failure to comply will result in criminal charges. Sir, Ju-woo stepped forward. We've located 4 more groups of survivors. With respect, we need just a few more hours. Your heroics are noted, Specialist Park. The official cut her off. But GAERC cannot sacrifice more rescue workers for a hopeless cause. The final evacuation ships depart in 3 hours. Anyone not aboard will be left behind. The screen went dark. The room was silent for a moment. Well, Do-hyun said finally, 3 hours it is. Ju-woo looked at her team, then at Selnar and the few alien rescue workers who had stayed. No one will blame you if you board those ships. This isn't your planet. These aren't your rules. Zelnar straightened to his full height. I have learned much from watching Deathworlders these past days. The most important lesson is that titles and rules mean nothing when lives are at stake. The other aliens nodded in agreement. One stepped forward. It was Telnar, the mining supervisor Ju-woo had rescued from the collapsed chamber. His scales bore the marks of his ordeal, but his stance was firm. You saved me and my workers, he said. Let me help save the others. Ju-woo nodded. Then let's make a plan. Deep in Section 14, 90 miners huddled in a reinforced safety chamber. The air was growing stale. The lights flickered as power systems failed. Many had given up hope. A loud bang on the sealed door made them jump. Then another. Then a voice called through. This is Park Ju-woo of the rescue team. Stand back from the door. The miners scrambled away as the door began to glow red around the edges. Then, with a screech of metal, it was pulled away. Ju-woo stood in the opening, her exoframe's arms still glowing from the effort of forcing the door. Behind her stood a mixed team of humans and aliens. We don't have much time, she announced. Everyone who can walk. Help those who can't. Follow us exactly. No stopping, no questions. The miners didn't need to be told twice. They had heard stories about the human rescue teams. For 5 days, tales had spread through the emergency channels about the Deathworlders who refused to give up. As they moved through the unstable tunnels, the ground trembled constantly. Support beams groaned. Toxic gas seeped through widening cracks. The main exits are blocked, Do-hyun explained as they walked. But we've mapped an alternate route through maintenance tunnels. A young alien miner looked concerned. Those tunnels can't hold this many people at once. They don't need to hold for long, Do-hyun replied. Just long enough. The group reached a junction where Yoonji waited with medical supplies. She quickly assessed the miners, identifying the most injured. These 5 need immediate attention, she said to Ju-woo. The rest can make it to the surface. Ju-woo nodded and activated her comm. Hyun, status on the other groups. Team 2 has reached the 20 miners in Section 9. Team 3 is still searching for the group in Section 22. Hyun's voice was tight with tension. Ju-woo, the GAERC ships are preparing for departure. 1 hour left. Understood. Ju-woo turned to the rescued miners. We need to move faster. On the surface, chaos reigned. The final evacuation ships were powering up their engines. GAERC officials were conducting headcounts, checking off names from their lists. The gray-scaled official stood at the boarding ramp of the command ship, watching the disaster zone with narrowed eyes. Any sign of the remaining teams? No, sir, his aide replied. But our sensors are limited due to the increasing geological activity. We cannot wait any longer, the official decided. Signal all ships to prepare for immediate. Sir, the aide interrupted, pointing. Movement at the eastern edge of the complex. In the distance, figures were emerging from a maintenance tunnel. First a few, then dozens. Miners, rescue workers, a stream of survivors making their way toward the evacuation zone. The official's eyes widened. How many? At least 80, sir, and more coming. Leading the group was Stelnar, helping injured miners walk. Behind him came Yunji and Doyun, carrying those too weak to move on their own. The mixed team of humans and aliens worked in perfect coordination, supporting each other through the toxic atmosphere and high gravity. Where is Specialist Park? The official demanded. As if in answer, another tunnel entrance collapsed in the distance. A moment later, a different hatch burst open. Ju emerged, carrying 2 alien children. Behind her came the last rescue team, herding the final group of survivors. The official watched in silence as the rescued miners were quickly loaded onto the waiting ships. Against all odds, against direct orders, the human-led teams had succeeded. As Ju approached the command ship, the official stepped forward. Specialist Park, you disobeyed a direct order. Yes, sir, she replied simply. I did. 143 lives saved after the evacuation was ordered, the official stated. An impressive number. Every life matters, Ju said. That's what humans believe. The official studied her for a long moment. Report to GAERC headquarters once we reach orbit. Your actions require discussion. 1 month later, Park Ji-woo stood in the grand hall of GAERC headquarters. The room was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. At the front, a panel of high-ranking officials sat in judgment. Specialist Park, the lead official began. Your actions on Teller IV violated numerous GAERC protocols. You endangered yourself, your team, and others by remaining on the surface past the evacuation deadline. Ji-woo stood straight, her expression calm. Beside her stood her team, and, surprisingly, Commander Zellner. However, the official continued, the results cannot be ignored. The Taylor IV operation has set new records for survival rates in Class 5 disasters. Your methods, while unorthodox, proved effective. Murmurs spread through the hall. The official raised a hand for silence. The Galactic Council has reviewed the situation and reached a decision. The classification of Deathworlder is being revised. No longer will it be merely a warning designation. Instead, it will recognize the unique capabilities and perspectives such species bring to emergency response. Ji-woo glanced at her team in surprise. Furthermore, the official announced, the Council has approved the creation of a new GAERC division, Advanced Environmental Response and Training. This division will be tasked with developing rescue protocols for extreme conditions and training personnel from all species in these methods. The official looked directly at Ji-woo. Specialist Park, you are hereby promoted to director of this new division. Your first assignment is to establish a training program that combines human techniques with the diverse capabilities of all member species. Ji-woo stepped forward. Thank you for this honor, but I have one request. Proceed. I want Commander Zellner as my co-director, Ji-woo said. On Teller IV, he showed that the Deathworlder mindset isn't limited to humans. Anyone can learn to think beyond protocols when lives are at stake. The official considered, then nodded. Granted. 6 months later, a new class of rescue specialists graduated from the first Advanced Environmental Response Training Program. The group was diverse, humans working alongside dozens of alien species. They had trained together in the harshest environments, learning from each other's strengths. In a special ceremony, Park Ji-woo and Zellner presented the graduates with their new insignia, a symbol showing diverse hands joined together. Today marks a new chapter in galactic emergency response. Jiwoo told the graduates, "You have learned that it's not where you evolve that matters, but how you respond when others need help." Among the graduates was Telnar, the mining supervisor from Taylor IV. After his rescue, he had volunteered for the program, determined to learn the Deathworlder way. As the ceremony ended, Selnar approached Jiwoo. "The council has requested our presence. Another situation has developed, a space station collision near Rigel 7. Casualties?" Jiwoo asked immediately. "Unknown, but conditions are extreme. High radiation, zero gravity, structural failure." Jiwoo nodded. "Alert the response team. We leave in 1 hour." As they walked toward the command center, Selnar asked the question that had been on his mind for months. Why do humans do this? Why risk everything for strangers? Jiwoo considered her answer carefully. "On Earth, we learned early that our greatest strength isn't our ability to survive hardship. It's our ability to face hardship together." She looked at the diverse team preparing for the mission, humans and aliens working side by side, each bringing unique strengths to the challenge ahead. "That's the true meaning of being a Deathworlder," she continued. "Not that we evolved on a dangerous planet, but that we evolved understanding that no one survives alone." Zellner nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is a lesson all species need to learn." "That's why we're here," Jiwoo said with a smile. "To teach, to learn, and to save lives together." As alarms sounded and the response team assembled, the message was clear. The term Deathworlder had taken on a new meaning across the galaxy. Not a warning, but a promise. When disaster struck, when hope seemed lost, the Deathworlders would come, and they would bring everyone else with them, teaching the galaxy that the will to save others was the greatest strength of all.